I became first involved in sports at a very, very young age. I remember my mom catching us out in the yard and throwing ball and hitting some balls to us. And I think my dad caught on immediately that, hey, there's some potential here. And so Dad stepped in from that point and signed us up for what still exists as the PARDS rec ball. We've lived on Rancher Lane, of course, and that's where we had a softball field. My dad built us our own softball field where my house sits today. That was something I always wanted, was to build my house on the softball field. And so my dad built us a full softball complex, would you say. The only thing we were lacking was a concession stand, and we almost had that. That's where we practiced, that's where we played mini games, and our friends would come over and we would play there, and then we would end up in the swimming pool. Growing up, I had several role models, 3 that come to mind for sure. First and foremost, my mom and dad. If it wouldn't have been for my mom starting out in the yard with us, she wouldn't have gotten us started on softball, but for sure my dad. My dad picked up from there and carried the load of late night practices. Like I said earlier, the softball complex that was built in the field, there was never an excuse for sure. And if Dad was going to be late, it was make sure you throw your 100 pitches, strikes or balls, make sure you throw 100 pitches. And I can remember him setting up a net with a bucket. And so there was no excuse for even a catcher. And so I would have my bucket of balls and I would throw a bucket of balls to the net, and until I got to 100. And I can vividly remember him pulling up after a long day work in his work van and asking me what number I was on. And the funny thing is our hallway at the house is very narrow, but narrow enough and long enough for a pitcher. And so if it was raining outside, we were pitching in the hallway. And so many people ask, well, you didn't bust out the glass? And I said, even if I did, it didn't matter, as long as we got our pitches in. For me, my dad was my biggest role model because he pushed me without making me hate it to be a better person. But then on the flip of that is my twin sister. You know, I have a twin sister who played ball side by side with me, so you always had a partner. You always had somebody to go outside and throw with. So play at the independent league, what we called summer ball after our rec league, and then even playing in high school. So I always had that partner with me. And so for that, I credit my family as my role models. Once I started tournament ball, we graduated from what we call the rec ball. I played with Stingers, and all of our friends that played on Stingers also were on our high school softball team. And so you create a family, and that becomes your friends and your family. You don't go to birthday parties on the weekends because you're playing ball. You don't go to weddings because you're at the ball tournaments. And so the friendships and those memories that were created still exist today. I still stay in touch with many of my friends that were my softball family. I have several memorable moments at Denham Springs High School. I think the first that stands out is my role as a freshman athlete and stepping up in the starting role as a pitcher in some sense. There was a rotation there, but rotating, pitching in really important games. But the biggest moment that stands out was the state tournament. You know, that's the goal for any high school athlete. And I got called in the first inning of the state tournament. And I remember being a nervous wreck. I don't remember how the game turned out. Of course, it was a blur, but the crowd and just pitching under the lights and the people, it just was a moment I remember as being very impactful to me as an athlete. And so it's something I definitely remember. Miss Spangler, Robbie Spangler and Lauren Byers took on coaching duties starting my sophomore year. And I remember the role they played in my life, and the memories I have of them are lasting. Every game, there was a note wrote to each player, and I still have all those notes. And it was so important for us because no matter if we won or lost, there was something said about our impact to the team, the positive impact, what we could do better, what we could change. And I just remember that's what we anticipated, those notes, because they were so important to us in our learning and our building as just young athletes and growing up and maturing. And so those memories have been, still are very important and near and dear to my heart. And speaking of just Denham Springs High School softball, you know, you can't help but see where it's gone or going from playing on the same field I played rec ball at and thinking we get to play at the high school softball field tonight, which was just another rec softball field. We always looked for the yellow tubing on the outfield fence because that was the high school softball field with the ads on the outfield fence. And then now to see that they're going to have their own complex, it's great. It's amazing, and I think softball needs that. I think all sports need their own fields at their high schools, but to see softball evolving the way it has, going from a rec field now to a brand new complex, it's exciting. I did have an outstanding career at Southeastern, and I had many highlights. I was very fortunate, but it doesn't go without saying hard work pays off. As a freshman, I think you leave the high school on a high because you're a standout athlete in your own high school, and then you enter a collegiate level where everybody's great. And so you don't walk in there the best, you're one of the best. And so for me, that was very humbling. I think that was the first time I'd been humbled as an athlete and reminded that I had to step back and start over and work hard because there was a senior second baseman playing. And so it was very hard for me to walk in and go, okay, Dee, you're gonna just be a DH while you sit behind one of the best second basemen in our division. And that was hard for me. I was like, I'm not used to sitting the bench, and I don't know how to mentally stay in the game if I'm just a hitter. And so I started having to think of, wait, what can I do different? And so I learned how to play outfield. And so I'd never played outfield, but if that was the way I was gonna get in the softball games and be in the softball games. So my freshman year, I actually played outfield. My accomplishments during my 4 years, of course, you know, I had some success each year, but I really had a standout senior year. I was recognized for all regional. Those accomplishments were just a lot of hard work. You know, you have to put in the work, and if I could tell that to any athlete, it doesn't just end when you start high school and you think you're at your best. I mean, the biggest and most humbling thing was learning that you had to work even extra harder at the collegiate level because everybody's good. And so that never stopped. I worked really hard and had a great senior year, and I made my mind up that I was going to go out with no regrets, and I certainly didn't. To be inducted into Denham Springs Hall of Fame is an honor that I still can't wrap my brain around. Like I said, we've had so many standout athletes come through Denham Springs. In graduating, we had 5 athletes alone, softball athletes, that went on to play at the collegiate level. So to be recognized as a Hall of Fame athlete in softball, I'm just honored to have the opportunity to do. One, for my kids to see, because my kids are athletes, and so it shows them that hard work pays off. There's many people I would like to thank, but most importantly, my mom and dad. Definitely want to thank my mom and dad, my sister, my twin sister, for just always being my wingman. But last but certainly not least is Robbie Spangler and Lauren Byers. Wow, they were so impactful during my high school career. Keeping God at center of the softball team, praying, keeping us motivated, you know, that we wanted to work hard, we wanted to go to practice, and we wanted to do good. And all credit goes to just them making us believe in ourselves. It's easy to lose a student athlete at our age. You know, they quit, they don't want to play. There's other things they want to get involved in, but they always saw to it that we were happy, but we wanted to work for them because they were great coaches, great motivators. And so for that, I'm forever thankful between those two, my mom and dad and my twin sister.